Network. This is the Flex Network. Flex on them. Flex on everybody. This right here is the Flex Network. Yeah. Flex.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Flex Network. I am your host, as always, Flex Shane. Please follow me on Twitter at the Flex Network 1. I'm joined by the cartographer himself. You guys know him as Alan Seslowski. Al, how you doing, brother?
Oh, it's a beautiful Sunday morning. Flex Network, here we go. From what I understand, you've told me that you are daring to challenge me today in a contest, which I plan to beat you at. A mock draft contest. A mock draft contest.
Oh, I think to suggest that it's going to be somewhat of a contest would be like me mocking against you. But I think this is like what I want to do, Al, is I want to go to fantasypros.com and I want to do a mock draft with you, one and the same. Hence why you are going to help people. You're going to map people through their drafts. We're going to guide and educate them because, you know, it's one thing for us to give us rankings and to say you should do this, but until you're in a live situation, you want to have that practice. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to fantasypros.com. We're going to do a mock draft live on air. This is our first time doing this, so it might be an unmitigated disaster. It might be a total success. We're just going to have to figure that out live on the air. So, Al, shall we get started?
Let's do it, baby. Get right into the content.
All right. So we are going to, like I said, we're going to go to fantasypros.com. And as you'll see here, it is a mock draft simulator. I highly recommend. I mean, look, we talk about it all the time. We feel like best balls are the best place to actually get practice with your drafts. But barring that, you can go to fantasypros.com. It's a pretty good draft simulator.
You made a good point. Let's not scurry that point. The reason that best ball is a better gauge of where the real ADP is because people have stake in the game. Even if it's $1, $5, $10, when you have your own money or your own stake in a contest, you're going to treat it differently. I mean, long gone are the days. If you've been fantasy football mock drafting for 10, 15 years, you remember the days where somebody would come into your ESPN mock draft and just take Tim Tebow in the first round and then just bounce it, or they would do the first 5 picks and leave. Those mock drafts were useless. At least in this one, it's a little bit more of a controlled environment. It's you versus an AI algorithm. But like you just said, I want to underline the point that best ball and when people actually have real money in real drafts is when you find out what the real ADP is.
Yeah, and so where this pulls the data from is from ESPN.com, Yahoo.com, and those ADPs. So it's, you know, it somewhat resembles a real draft, but we do know that nothing truly resembles a real draft, hence why we suggest doing best balls. But
real drafts resemble real drafts, right?
Yeah, exactly. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a 12-team PPR standard snake draft. We're going to do 12 teams, like I said. We were debating doing a 2 QB, but you know, for the casual players, typically more of a 1 QB situation. So we'll do 1 QB, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and a tight end. Then I'll do 1 flex. Yeah, 1 flex for wide receiver, running back, and tight end. And then we'll do 6 bench spots. No kicker, no defense, because it's kind of a waste of time. So I'm going to randomize our draft position. You go with that, or do you want to choose one? Is there a position that you feel like?
I like the randomizer.
All right,
so we're going to do this. We're on the same team. We're doing this together.
Yeah, we're doing this together, Alan. We're going to work together for once.
I've been preparing for weeks to compete against you in this event. So all of my training is for nothing, is what you're saying?
That was my trick. My trick. All right. So we fortunately pulled the 12 spot, which is, I don't love it, but we are going to do it. So ready to go? Let's go. So again, just to repeat, it's the composite ADP with ESPN, Fantrax, RT Sports, and Fantasy Football Calculator ADP, as well as expert consensus rankings. So we're going to start our draft. So we're at the 12 spot, like I said, and we're going to get going here. So as expected, there's a lot of guys going off the board, primarily running backs, and we are now on the clock. So
can you hide the hidden? Can you hide the drafted guys?
Yes, I will do that. So I'm going to hide tiers. I'm going to hide drafted players. And this is just a list of players that we have here. So
well, you know where I would go with this. You know where I would go.
Yes, I do know where you'd go with this. And I have a feeling where I want to go with this as well. But I mean, really the decision here is between, do we want to go with an elite wide receiver or do we want to double up on running backs. I mean, I think for sure we want to take at least one running back here, but because it's such a long time before our next pick at the end of the third round, we have to decide, do we want to double up or do we want to hedge a little bit and take a wide receiver? So I'm assuming your first top player here would be Kenyon Drake.
Well, it's interesting. Miles Sanders is there too. I still like Drake a bit better, and I like Austin Eckler better than both of them. It's just that during the ADP, I've said this on multiple podcasts already, that I actually have Austin Eckler ranked higher than Drake, but because of how ADP falls, I'm able to usually take Drake in the first round and then take Eckler in the second round. But
Right.
where would you like to go on this one? What would you think?
Well, we've both done a lot of best balls. We have an understanding here that running back is going to go quickly, and I would be a lot more comfortable doubling up on running back, knowing that I've got two workhorses on my team, and I feel like we can figure out wide receiver a little bit later. So I would be leaning between guys like Kenyon Drake, Austin Eckler, Miles Sanders. Those would probably be my top three choices.
Any two of those guys. Why don't we go with Drake and Sanders for this draft?
Sure. All right. So we're gonna go Kenyon
You're
Drake.
in agreement on that?
Let's
Even
do
though,
it.
like I said, I have Eckler higher. I would, in a real draft with real money, I would have taken Eckler, but I know how Shane feels about Miles Sanders, and obviously there's good reason for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these situations where it's so close that, I probably would go Miles Sanders because just I like the Eagles situation a little bit better. We've talked about it before, how there's really not a lot of wide receivers there. So we think
here's the argument against Sanders in that group of three is that the Eagles were the ones trying to get Devontae Freeman in there. And and you look at that, one of my favorite fantasy football strategies, Shane, as you know, is to look how these players finish the season, the last 5 games, 6 games, 7 games. And we know Kenyon Drake was a top 5 running back, and they paid him, and he just had this monster finish. Same was true for Miles Sanders, but they were also giving the ball to Boston Scott, right? With Austin Eckler, I mean, he still finishes a top 5 overall fantasy back, even with Melvin Gordon there. Now Melvin Gordon's not there. So those are the two, Drake and Eckler, that I've identified as of having the path least resistance to fantasy glory. Whereas I still love Miles Sanders, but the coaches just kind of itching around to have a backfield mate with a significant role is a little bit, it pushes him in the third position of those three for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. Just for the people, because the whole point of this exercise is to help people learn and understand. We have guys like Julio Jones, Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins available. Would any of these overall wide receivers, would you consider them in this position? Or in your mind, is it we're going running back here? We're just so much more comfortable with the wide receiver depth. And even though these are elite wide receivers, we feel like we can do better down the road. Is that pretty accurate for you?
I was put to the test in the Beat Chris List League that I did, $350 entry, and I had the same exact choice, and I went with the running back. So I like to believe when the stake was in the game, when it was time to test that my theory, that I went with the 2 running backs.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to go Miles Sanders here. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're going to draft Miles Sanders. All right, so now we have a long way. A lot of players are going to come off the board before our next pick. So now we just saw Patrick Mahomes go
36 and 37 now, right? On ADP, that's where we're at.
Yep, exactly. So again, going back here, we're looking at the wide receivers. None of the guys really jump out at me. There's Odell, Amari Cooper, Cooper Kupp, AJ Brown. It feels like it's a little bit early for all those guys.
Oh, Odell? You think this is early for Odell?
Let's talk about that for a second, okay? So sometimes, I have probably a mid 4th round grade on Odell, and because of that, we're a little bit early. But we both know that like I said, there's a lot of picks before our next choices, and even though that wide receiver is deep, Odell has massive, massive upside. And if he can just come back to really even, 85, 90% of what he was, he's still going to be a dominant wide receiver. And I would argue that he's probably going to be better than Amari Cooper. And I think he's certainly going to be a little bit, higher upside than a guy like Cooper Kupp, Calvin Ridley. So, I mean, yeah, it's not the worst decision there. We saw both the elite QBs go off the board. That's no surprise. I probably wouldn't even, maybe would have been considering, but we typically don't go quarterback early. On the running back side, there's guys like Chris Carson, who I feel like he could have a lot of workload, and he would be a guy that I would consider here. So
Well,
for me, I mean, I would. So go ahead, Al.
yeah, I was just going to say that you bring up an interesting point, and I think that you're talking about giving actionable tips to our subscribers, our listeners. Here's one for you. So we're at the end of the third round. We're at ADP 36 and 37, the beginning of the fourth. And Shane said that he likes Odell's upside, but he has a mid fourth round grade on him. Okay, so that basically is like ADP 40, and we're not involved in ADP 40 in the position we're at. So we have to. You have to expand your ADP radius a little bit when you're drafting on the ends, because if a player is not going to come back to you and you have him going 5 picks later, that is your ADP range. Your ADP range is about 3 ahead of where you are and about 7 or 8 behind you. So that is the true ADP range, meaning that if a player is going to go 5 picks later, that's not you can't say that that's a difference. If you have him as a mid fourth, you also have him as a late third. It's the same ADP grade, most likely in the situation we're in. Now, you also identified that Odell, you acknowledged that he has top 5 upside. What you think Chris Carson has top 5 upside?
I think Chris Carson on a given week has top 5 upside, simply because he doesn't. I mean, just because, Seattle wants to run the ball. I am quite high on Russell Wilson. I currently have him as my QB4, because I feel like even though Seattle wants to run the ball, they're going to have to throw a lot. Carlos Hyde is a guy that I've been targeting late. It's like one of my last picks in my drafts, because Chris Carson simply is not going to be able to handle every single touch. And if he does get injured, Carlos Hyde is, the upside is massive there. So, simply it's Chris Carson has done it before, where he's proven that he can be a workhorse. He doesn't really have a lot of competition. Rashad Penny is not coming back at least probably to week 8. So it's Chris Carson's backfield at least for the first month and a half of the season, which makes me consider him here. But there's also downside.
Yeah. I mean, massive downside. Like massive downside. Like as in he's not even playing by week 5 or 6 downside. Now, that's what I'm saying. Like to forego the upside, we've already gone running back. So we've secured our starters. Now, if you want to build on that base, I have no problem. But I just think that Chris Carson is a player that belongs more in like that icky running back, that stinky cheese running back range, like the 5th, 6th round. I don't think he belongs there, but there's other smart fantasy players like yourself that have that same take on him. I just think that when you could take a player like Odell Beckham here at the end of the third round, and you would not be surprised if he outproduces even Michael Thomas. I mean, by all accounts, the Cleveland Browns offense has an adult in the room now. They have Kevin Stefanski. Now, even though Kevin Stefanski didn't feature the wide receivers, Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs finished with an average of 10 and 14 fantasy points per game. We do know that the tree is small, meaning that it has Odell Beckham and there's Jarvis Landry, and that's it. There's no third wide receiver to speak of. Yes, the tight end they brought in. Yes, the Austin Hooper can catch passes. We know that Kareem Hunt is going to be a prolific pass catcher, but there's no third wide receiver. Odell Beckham should walk into 140 targets this year, and it could be 160. I think it would be a grave mistake to at least explore that upside at the end of the third round.
I think that's totally fair. Looking at my rankings, which you can find at dfsarmy.com, I have Amari Cooper and Odell as my top 2 wide receivers left available on the board. Would you be cool taking those picks, or is there somebody more?
Yeah. Well, again, I think that Amari Cooper is one of the best 4th round picks you can make, and but I just I'm staring at Calvin Ridley is a player that got a lot of hype this offseason, but it just seems like he's never in a position. We're never in a position to draft him because. It just, I always like players I'm a little more confident in players. Like, basically, if I want Calvin Ridley on my teams, I feel like I'm always forcing the pick rather than letting it come to me. Don't you feel that way about him?
100%. I have very little Calvin Ridley, not because I don't think he's a good player, not because I don't think there's a massive upside. Obviously, if Julio goes down, but that's an if, right? In my rankings, I've got players like DJ Chark, like Tyler Lockett, like Devontae Parker ranked higher than him because I trust their situations a little bit more than I trust Calvin Ridley. So, I'm not going to belabor the point. We're going to go Odell Beckham here.
Can I just add one more thing? You get Beckham and Cooper. We agree on that. You could draft them in the meantime, and we'll talk. But speaking of forcing the Calvin Ridley pick, I took a loss, or I took a perceived loss in value to get him on on a dynasty team that I was in.
Right.
So I traded away in a super flex my third QB, Goff, to get Calvin Ridley and then like a second round pick. And that's way undervalued. But, I needed a receiver. Goff was I gave up a little extra to get the deal done. So again, It was forcing the pick.
Well,
by the way,
dynasty,
Shane, am I grainy on your screen? Do I look like I have a good connection?
You look pretty clear to me.
Yeah, your connection's a little grainy. I don't know, but I hear you perfectly.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, it's very possible. I've got my kid upstairs streaming Netflix, so.
Okay, no, you're good, though. I can hear you perfectly, and most people are going to listen to this rather than watch it anyway.
Okay,
so.
Excellent. Okay, so we are now on our next picks, so rounds 5 and 6.
So review. Our team is the 2 running backs, Sanders and Drake, and then we have Odell and Cooper.
Amari Cooper.
Okay.
I mean, that's a pretty sick start. That's a pretty sick start.
Listen, in the top 50 picks, I just wrote an article for Roster Watch about this, that in the top 50 picks, there are players that have tremendous risk in them. We just pick the guys with the highest upside here. And even though there are risk in each of our picks outside of each one of our picks has a little more risk than you would think for a top 50 pick. We have just loaded up with, with upside here. Like this is, we went for league winning picks with minimal risk. So I like how we started this draft.
Yeah. And, when we selected the 12th pick, I think that's a good point, Al, is that at the end of the first round, there's no just absolute slam dunks, right? You could make an argument against each one of those players that you're picking. And it's just one of the reasons why I don't love being stuck at the turn there, just because you're not getting those elite kind of no question type players like your, Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley. There's really no slam dunks, but I say that, the team that we've got are pretty solid. Again, Kenyon Drake, Miles Sanders, Odell, and Amari Cooper. These are all guys that have done it before and just have absolutely massive upside. So next pick, round 5, round 6, I'm staring here, at least for the discussion purposes, we've got at the QB position, there's Dak Prescott and Russell Wilson, as well as Kyler Murray. I have those guys all within a similar tier. To me, it's still a little bit early to take quarterback, even if you're getting one of these top guys. Would you even consider taking quarterback here, Al?
There's a one QB league?
This is a 1 QB league.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would consider it. We're in the 5-6 turn right now, right, Shane?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. Because I even though there's tons of quarterbacks and people get hung into this like wait on quarterback theory, and there's merit to it. But one of the worst things that could happen to you is you wait on quarterback and then you're stuck with, oh my God, I got Aaron Rodgers in the 9th round. This is awesome. Take a look at Aaron Rodgers' game log from last year. A lot of 10 and 14 point weeks. Now you think no big deal, but like that, you really want to have like a baseline of 18 points with your QB. And that's like the baseline. You want 25 point weeks. So so when your tight end flames out on you, when your wide receiver 2 flames out, you have a cushion there. So I think there's a lot of merit to Dak and Kyler at this point. I've understand waiting, but I'm all in on taking one of those guys at this point. We can wait and see if what happens if we pass one more time. But my inkling is that we'll probably not get one of those guys. I have there's Carson Wentz in the next go. You can wait.
Right.
Josh Allen. I love the upside there. So maybe we should wait and see if we can get. If you and I both agree that Josh Allen is a top 5 QB, or you have more as a top 8 guy, right?
Yeah, I have more of a top 8 guy. I think there's just such big downside. I mean, I don't think he's going to score 9 rushing touchdowns again next year. And, going back to your point about Rodgers, just go ahead, Al.
Yeah, I was just going to say with Josh Allen. Now, I don't think the downside's there with Josh Allen. I've been arguing this on Twitter with just random people, and I get so emotional that I must have, I don't know what it is about Josh Allen that gets me so emotional, but okay, he's going into his 3rd year. Year 1, his rookie season, the last 6 weeks of his rookie season, he was the QB1 overall. I mean, he had to get used to the NFL, and once he got rolling, overall QB1, not and the number 1 player in fantasy. Last year, he showed a major baseline of about 18, 20 fantasy points. He didn't have. So what's the problem? A guy that showed consistency from fantasy, not reality. We all know that, a little inaccurate, and showed he already has QB1 overall in his range of outcomes. What the hell is everybody missing with Josh Allen? What,
Well, I think the problem, the current quarterback of today is a rushing quarterback. I think we'd both agree with that. I mean, again, you look at the guys that are top on this board, they all have rushing upside in the range of outcomes. But for me, if those touchdowns go away, you just mentioned it with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, where Rodgers might put up the yards, but when he's got his main running back like Aaron Jones or potentially AJ Dillon stealing a bunch of rushing touchdowns away from him, and he doesn't have that upside with his legs, it limits his potential. So look, I'm not saying like I've got Josh Allen as one of my top 8 QBs, right? So I'm not saying that I'm absolutely out on him. I'm just saying the risk is there that I expect that there's going to be some regression in the rushing touchdowns. Again, he scored 9 rushing touchdowns last year. You want to know how many Lamar Jackson scored?
Yeah, but
7.
Right, but I'm not saying that you're even like when I did my projections, I projected Josh Allen for 4 rushing touchdowns. That's what I had him projected as, right? But it's the rushing yards. It's when the pocket breaks down, a lot of quarterbacks will dump off to the running back, right? Josh Allen scrambles. Yeah. He's going to get you 35 to 40 rushing yards a game. And there's going to be games when Josh Allen has 100 yards rushing. It's going to happen 2 or 3 times. That alone makes up that deficit.
Well, I mean, he had similar rushing numbers to Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray had 544 rush yards last year. Josh Allen had 510. The key difference here was that Kyler Murray only scored 4 touchdowns. I say only, but
right. And look where
4 touchdowns on the ground.
And look where we're ranking Kyler Murray as QB3 or QB4 in most rankings.
Yeah, well, and that's the upside. That's the reality of it, right? That's why a guy like Aaron Rodgers doesn't really instill a lot of just sexiness because
we're talking about Josh Allen though. Like I said, if you look at if you go down Josh Allen's game logs, I mean there's 35 fantasy points in there. There's 25 fantasy points. Like there's a couple weeks where he hits his floor and the floor is like 15, but we're not going to have to take Josh Allen on the 5-6 turn here. We're going to have to take Josh Allen in the 9-10 turn. I mean, that's what I'm saying is why don't we punt QB for this round? Let's take our position players that we like, and let's see if we can land on Josh Allen at the next turn. Okay.
Yeah. I think that's a good little plan here. Okay. So at the running back position, I'm going to list off some of the top ranked guys here. There's Jonathan Taylor, which I haven't really ever seen him fall to the 5-6 turn. So not sure how accurate that is, but David Montgomery, Kareem Hunt, DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, and I'm even going to throw Raheem Mostert into this equation. At the wide receiver position, there's Devontae Parker, Tyler Boyd, guys like Julian Edelman, Marvin Jones, and then I'll even speak off some of the tight ends, even though I wouldn't recommend going tight end here. There's Evan Ingram, Tyler Higbee, Hayden Hurst, Hunter Henry. So my initial gut tells me that if I get Jonathan Taylor here, I feel like the upside is there and it's worth taking a shot at the 5-6 turn.
I'm in.
All right. Okay, so we're going Jonathan Taylor.
And I've been anti-Jonathan Taylor at his 3rd round ADP. So yes, in the 5th round.
3rd round, yeah, the 5-6 turn, man. That's a steal. So we're going to draft Jonathan Taylor. And then to me, like the guy that jumps out the most in terms of a value is Devontae Parker. If we can get Devontae Parker as our wide receiver 3, I'm all in on that.
It sounds great, and I agree with it, but here there's opportunity cost of that. Now, I agree.
Yes.
Devontae Parker is your wide receiver 3. It's unbelievable. But I think the running backs are dry up severely after this clip. I would be more comfortable taking a running back and ending up with like a Darius Slayton as a volatile wide receiver 3. Or even going, if we want to go a little more steady. Who's that?
Or we get William Fuller.
Will Fuller the 4th. I wonder if Will Fuller the 3rd and the 2nd were as fast as Will Fuller the 4th.
I think it's evolution. These people get faster and faster every generation. But
so that's what I'm saying. Yes, Parker would be a great pick, but I think position scarcity at the running back position is starting to dry up already. And there's a few guys I like on there. I'll let you take your choice. For me, it's DeAndre Swift or Kareem Hunt. But if you like Montgomery, if you like Cam Akers, if you like Raheem Mostert, then I'm all in.
The guy that jumps out to me is Kareem Hunt. Okay, so just one last point that we should mention here. So this is going to be our 4th running back. We only have 1 flex position, which means that the player that we're drafting here, this is depth. Why should we be drafting for depth at the running back position, Al, and not taking a wide receiver to fill our starting position? Okay. Just tell the people why we would do this.
Sure. I mean, running backs, they're more likely to get injured. And also the guys that could be projected for big workloads or even just a projectable workload are about to dry up. The wide receiver position's a little bit deeper. There's a more position scarcity, and in a short term, a more Corona year, you're going to want to have that RB depth. But you know what? That's an argument. The Corona, you can make an argument for the wide receivers because they are the ones that are more projectable on an annual basis, and we all know that running backs, if some guy we've never heard of that's the fourth running back on the roster right now could be named the starter, and we know that he's a top 15 running back right away.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. If Nick Chubb goes down, Kareem Hunt is going to just ball out. So I'm going to go Kareem Hunt here. You good with that?
Oh, yeah.
All right, we're going Kareem Hunt here. So we're going robust running back. And now we wait.
Don't use the word bust. Don't use the word bust when you're talking about our running backs.
Our boy Will Fuller went off the board, unfortunately. Ooh, you know who's at the top of the board here? Mr. Joshua Allen. So I think based on the previous discussion, we want to go Josh Allen here.
No brainer at this point. No brainer. Yeah.
All right. So just for the people, some of the other positions. Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Darius Slayton could be considered a poor man's Will Fuller, and only reason I would call him poor man's is because the targets aren't guaranteed. Like Will Fuller is guaranteed 100 targets, like as a floor, and it might be like 120, 130. Slayton's probably guaranteed about 75, 80 targets. Sure, it could be 100, but that's what I'm saying. That's the difference. I think they both have the same superpower, which is to flip the field.
Okay, so I'm going to pull the trigger here on Josh Allen.
Absolutely, it's a no-brainer.
Okay, absolutely. The upside, is just so massive at this point.
I mean, Montgomery's still on the board too. So I mean, this is turning out an interesting. Ronald Jones, Jordan Howard, Damian Williams. Those are all players I like too. So I misread the running back market a little bit. I don't anticipate in your real drafts that this is going to happen. I think that players like those will go in the 5th round, 6th round. Mm-hmm. So, but
what we found is that tight ends went in that last little run, and actually quite a few wide receivers went, because we're all the way down to the Christian Kirk, Jamison Crowder, Darius Slayton group of wide receivers. So wide receiver,
a 3-receiver league, you have to account for that, a 3-receiver league, right?
Absolutely. So look, David Montgomery, like if players are in your draft are going to reach for other for players, then we have to punish them out. We talk about this all the time. I don't want somebody to be able to wait and get David Montgomery.
You need to be spiteful.
I think we got to be spiteful here. Let's punt wide receiver because we know we can get guys later. I'm going to go David Montgomery here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't even mind Robbie. I don't even mind if Robbie Anderson is our wide receiver 3. Like I love that. He's being undervalued this year. So let's go. David Montgomery. Right, click it.
Boom. Going David Montgomery. All right.
Who do you like more, David Montgomery or Damian Williams?
It's tough, man. We have this discussion all the time. Do you want the lead running back / wide receiver in a low volume, poor man's offense, or do you want somebody who might be having a timeshare in a high octane Kansas City Chiefs offense? I would go Damian Williams, to be honest, over David Montgomery. But
we didn't do it.
I know we didn't do that. Okay. The thing is that
why don't you reverse it? You can.
Well, let's just talk about it for a sec, Al. Let's talk about it for a sec, okay? So I think at the start of the year, I think it's going to be the Damian Williams show, and I think people who are drafting Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the 2nd round are going to be a little bit disappointed to start the season. And we always talk about we want to get off to a fast start, but right now what we're doing, we're building our team, and how you build your team is so important. You need to understand that a guy like David Montgomery is probably going to have an every down role in that offense. You could argue Tariq Cohen, but he's going to have a set role probably in October and into November. Now, in the Corona season and with injuries, it's tough to really plan that far out. But at this point, we're drafting for depth of our running back position. So I feel more comfortable about David Montgomery's role in that offense in October than I do with Damian Williams' role in October. So I'm still cool with going with David Montgomery.
It's a high floor pick is what you're saying.
It's a high floor pick. It's a little bit safe. And, who fell to us? Our boy Darius Slayton. He's sitting there. So,
auto-click.
All right. Auto-click. We're going Darius Slayton.
Now, we need to at least talk about tight ends at this point.
Yes, I was just about to say that. So right now, we have guys like Hayden Hurst, Austin Hooper, Mike Gesicki on the board. Hayden Hurst, Austin Hooper.
I see somebody else that's on the board you didn't mention.
Your boy, Jonnu Smith.
That's the guy that needs to be considered at this point. Considered.
Okay. So right now, and my screen's kind of cut off, but I believe we only have 2 out of our 6 bench spots. So right now we can make a decision. Do we want to go and do we want to fill some of our bench spots, or do we want to fill that last starting position with the tight end? I'm going to say I think Jonnu Smith will fall.
All right, fair enough.
If we want Jonnu Smith, which I'm 100% comfortable waiting until late and getting a guy like Jonnu Smith, because it's kind of it's a strange year in the sense that we actually have tight end depth where these guys, these tight end 10, 11, 12s actually instill confidence. Like you're not scared.
Every year there's, I'm going to put air quotes, depth at tight end, but most of them don't pan out. Like we love Jonnu, and you've seen, I've put out a ton of videos on Jonnu Smith. I've flag planted for him, but there's like a 35-40% chance he's a complete bust, like complete bust. Right. You know, I mean, Anthony Ferkser's on that team could end up being more productive than Jonnu Smith. I mean, I'm not. It's nothing's guaranteed after you get out of the top 4 or 5 guys. So yes, there's depth, but one could argue that Jack Doyle, who will definitely be there in our next 1 or 2 picks, is a safer pick than Jonnu. I mean, it's, you know, he's done it before. He's little. It just, when we're talking about tight end 7 or tight end 6 through tight end 16, we only want to look at the upside, because those guys, you could find the next one. You could find Eric Ebron. You can, you know, there's so many players. Blake Jarwin. You know, there's so many of those type of guys.
In a 12-person league, I do not think that Jack Doyle is going to get drafted. So if you draft Jonnu Smith and he just absolutely shoots, shots the bed, then go and pick up Jack Doyle on the waiver wire. A guy that jumps out to me here that screams somebody who's not going to be here in your real drafts is J.K. Dobbins. To me, the value is there. I think we got to go J.K. Dobbins. Let's just continue hammering these running backs and punish our league. All right, we're going J.K. Dobbins. And now we wait.
Also, Daniel Jones is, going super late in these drafts. I mean, he's another popular wait on QB guy. So it'll happen in a lot of drafts. You'll be able to, people in these 1 QB, they say it's 1 QB, but according to some stats that came out from Yahoo said that average 12-team league, 1 QB leagues, that every owner has 1.5 QBs, meaning some owners take 2, a few take 3, so very few take 1. So even a 1 QB league with 5 bench spots, 6 bench spots is still a 2 QB league, because most teams are taking 2 QBs. Whether they hold on to them or have to drop them, that's a whole different story. But according to their draft data, it's 1.5 QBs per team.
I typically will draft 1 QB,
especially but you're not typical. Like Josh Allen. That's my point. You're not typical.
But Al, we're trying to educate the people how to win their leagues, right? And if the typical person drafts 1.5 quarterbacks, we need to help the listeners understand, is that optimal or is that suboptimal? In my opinion, because I'm looking at the board here, there's guys like Matt Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Daniel Jones, Baker Mayfield, who I have as a top 12 quarterback this year, Cam Newton, Kirk Cousins. There's so many guys available that I would much rather go with a high upside wide receiver or running back, or even heck, I wouldn't do it, but I would consider a second tight end over a second quarterback, just because I know that I can go to the waiver wire and I can probably go and secure a pretty solid quarterback.
Well,
I'm not so sure about those other positions.
You're actually making my point for me, and this is what I'm saying, is that that mindset is correct when you're playing with like-minded people. But we know we play in a lot of leagues with, we play in a lot of good competitive leagues, and we play in some leagues where have a lot of like home league players. I'm going to, use that term loosely. And you think there's going to be Kirk Cousins on the waiver wire, but there's not. The reality is, if you only end up with 1 QB and you have Josh Allen and something goes wrong, that you're actually looking, the waiver wire QBs are not Kirk Cousins or Jared Goff. The waiver wire QBs are more like Teddy Bridgewater, Derek Carr. No, I think Minshew is going to be a popular pick this year. I don't think you're going to see him on the waiver wire. I think he's going to be someone that waited on QB that got Jared Goff is going to draft Gardner Minshew as their second QB. I think Tyrod Taylor, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Derek Carr. Those are those are going to be the waiver wire guys. So if you draft Pat Mahomes, if you draft Dak Prescott, I agree, you don't need it. But if I'm confident in Josh Allen. So you're right. I would only draft 1 QB with Josh Allen. But if he's truly your QB8, Shane, I think you need to consider. Now again, every draft plan is flexible. You need to consider Daniel Jones over like a high upside Paris Campbell. I think there's more value in Daniel Jones because you could always, if Daniel Jones pans out how you and I both think he's going to, we don't need to trade Daniel Jones. We could trade our Dak Prescott. You always could trade the better guy.
And that's typically what I'll do because you're going to get a lot more for Dak Prescott. That's the play, people. That is the play. But okay, so what do we want to do here? Do we want to go and secure our? Okay, I'm going to scroll down to our tight end. So Jonnu Smith is there. Austin Hooper's still sitting there. I mean, I've got a higher grade on Austin Hooper as well as Mike Gesicki than I do Jonnu Smith.
We can double tap. You want to double tap tight end? Or you want to go one
double tap tight end at, I would say we're pretty secure at running back, but some of the running backs available here are really the backups: Nyheim Hines, Tony Pollard, Chase Edmonds.
I think it's wide receiver to switch positions, though. It's time to switch positions.
Yeah, I'm just reading through some of these. Yeah. So running back, we're secure. We got 3 running backs on our bench. We got our 2 starters. We went running back. I'm pretty cool with that. Robbie Anderson's available. Guys like Paris Campbell, James Washington, Denzel Mims. Those are the types of wide receivers you're going to be looking at. None of them really instill confidence. Robbie Anderson is a guy that we like as kind of a sleeper. Would you want to go tight end? Would you consider Robbie Anderson here?
How I would go here is I would go Gesicki and Jonnu Smith. That's how I would do it. But okay. We're drafting together. So if you have other plans, I'm open.
Because we have essentially faded wide receiver, we only have our 3 starters on the team. I would probably feel a little bit more comfortable with an upside play like a Robbie Anderson, and then go and draft a tight end, and then maybe come back.
Here's the counter to that. Right? Yep. You said those are upside guys. We don't need upside guys at this point. What we need is a little bit of floor at wide receiver. And I think the floor guys will be there on the next go. So let's get our 2 tight ends that we still have some confidence in because they will go. And then we could, for that third receiver, we can look at Randall Cobb. We can look at, Cole Beasley, guys that are going to get us our 10, 12 points. And if we want the upside, some of the big time rookies will be there. Corey Davis, if we want to take a stab there. James Washington. There will be there'll be options for wide receiver at floor and ceiling, whereas the tight end guys, we're going to be in a wilderness if we don't act now.
Okay, fair enough. So you want to go Gesicki and Jonnu Smith?
I think that's a fair split between our opinions, right?
Sure, let's do it. We're going to fade Austin Hooper.
Well, here's the thing with Austin Hooper. It's new team, new situation. Both of the guys that we just talked about there, Gesicki and Jonnu Smith, have that continuity thing going. I think the continuity factor is it's not underrated because a lot of analysts are talking about it, but it definitely is a decision maker for me, in especially the tight end position where it might take they have to learn the blocking and the passing. So it's almost like I'm treating Austin Hooper like a little bit more how I think about a rookie this year.
And I think that's totally fair. And look, we're down in Jarvis Landry this year, not because we don't love the talent, not because we don't feel like he's an underrated player in general, but there's so many issues right now. We don't know what's happening. He's still recovering from the hip injury. Now, we actually had Dr. Jesse Morse on the show 2 weeks ago, and he did talk about Jarvis Landry's hip injury. And what he said was that this was something that he was actually born with. And when he comes back, he has zero worry that this is going to hold Jarvis Landry back. The issue becomes if Jarvis Landry doesn't come back until week 4 in the season, that is a long time sitting on your bench.
Wait, and then you wonder, I need to stop you. Why does he have zero? Why does he have zero worry about Jarvis Landry?
Well, in terms of the recovery, So, a lot of these injuries that when they're back on the field, there's a bit of a lingering time frame. When a guy's come back from an ACL injury, it might take a couple months before he's really back to 100%. Yeah. When Jarvis Landry is fully healthy and he's cleared to play, Dr. Morse believes that because of the type of hip injury, now, not all hip injuries are the same. And if you guys want to actually hear the detail of it, because I'm not a doctor, go back, scroll down on our podcast feed and look for the show with Dr. Jesse Morse, or go to a YouTube page and look at Dr. Jesse Morse, and he will explain to you exactly why he's not so worried about once Jarvis Landry's back on the field. He's not worried about him. However, we don't know if that's going to be until October. Right.
There you go. Shane, smart to point that out, Shane. Okay, so this is the difference between doctors and fantasy football players. Now, I respect Dr. Jesse Morse. He's a very smart guy. I've listened to him talk. He's the real deal. I would go to him if I had a problem. I respect. But if I'm sure Jarvis Landry is going to live a full and productive life. But for fantasy football, he's not going to be fully up to speed and productive in the first month of the season. He's just and then you're gonna have to wait in week 5 to use him. And if he has a down game, then you can't use him in week 6. And then if he goes off in week 6 on your bench, you're gonna throw him in your lineup in week 7. And what if there's a problem there? It's a total headache, and it's a situation that we are going to avoid for fantasy. Now, if he goes off and we're wrong, fine. Our 8th round pick was someone better than that anyway.
Exactly. But I'm trying to make your argument against Austin Hooper. It's just that, Austin Hooper is going to get those short to intermediate passes. That's the Jarvis Landry area where he feasts. It's just another knock against Austin Hooper. We're going Jonnu Smith. Let's get rolling, baby. So now we've got our tight end. We are now just really need to fill the last couple of bench spots. I believe we've got 3 bench spots left that we need to fill.
So let's just take best player
right now
at this point, right?
We want to go best player available. That's for sure. We actually have two picks left.
The best player available. See, this was my point, Shane. The best player available is a quarterback. So, you said, you have Baker Mayfield as a top 12 option. If that comes to fruition, we're going to be, Josh Allen, as much upside as he has, like you said, there is a hint of a floor there, which I don't believe is as prominent as most. But I think this is the exact. Oh wait, is Baker there? Baker, he's
so hanging if you believe
out there, he's the top 12 option, how are you going to take him over an upside guy like Brandon Ayuk or Paris Campbell? Now, again, those guys have tremendous upside, but you see what I'm saying? When you get in these drafts and you're in the last couple rounds, just take the best player, even if it's a quarterback. Just do it.
Let's do it. I actually think, because Baker Mayfield was being drafted as a top 5 QB last year, he's essentially the Kyler Murray of last year. And I think he's got top 5 potential. We're just going to do it. Let's go Baker Mayfield. We're going to draft Baker Mayfield, a guy that you just mentioned that I love. Paris Campbell. Are you cool to take a flyer on Paris Campbell as the last pick of our draft?
Yeah, I mean, the two guys.
Two other players.
Yeah, the two guys I was eyeballing was Paris Campbell and James Washington. Those are the two. Okay. I would almost in a dynasty it would be Paris Campbell. In a redraft it would be James Washington, mostly because James Washington was the most productive downfield wide receiver with Ben Roethlisberger. 40-yard bombs are in play every week, and James Washington's heading into his 3rd year, where Paris Campbell's heading into his 2nd year, and I like that a little bit better for redraft.
James Washington with the last pick of your draft versus Deontay Johnson with your round 7 pick. I'm going James Washington all day. That is it. We have a pretty sick team, Alan Seslowsky. So to read off our team.
Thanks to me.
Thanks to you. And you know what? We got a B- grade from Fantasy Pros, which tells me we had one hell of a team. At quarterback, we have Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield. At running back, we've got Kenyon Drake, Miles Sanders, Jonathan Taylor, Kareem Hunt, David Montgomery, J.K. Dobbins. At wide receiver, we have Odell Beckham, Amari Cooper, Darius Slayton, James Washington for upside. At tight end, we have Mike Gesicki and Jonnu Smith. That is a pretty sick team, in my opinion. Alan, how do the people find you?
At Alan Seslowsky on Twitter, LinkedIn, and TikTok. And then if you like Instagram, I'm putting out some daily content on Instagram, Allen Fantasy Football, and my weekly articles for Roster Watch. Check, they're not behind the paywall; they're in front of the paywall, so you can get them for free at rosterwatch.com. On my Twitter, I post them, and then of course, you and I are doing the DFS Army Draft Kit. We're about to do another podcast right after this one, talking about your rankings and some ADP adjustments. Go check out dfsarmy.com and get into the Draft Kit, where we have a ton of information. Where do they find you, Shane?
I love it.
Oh, also,
of course, you could find
one other thing. Can I say one more other thing? I did a podcast this week for one of my new friends on Twitter, Tommy McDougal, and it was real fun to talk to him. So the Tommy McDougal podcast, if you want to go look that up, I was on his podcast, and he was a really skilled interviewer and so on to talk. We had a good conversation there. So go check that out.
Go check it out. Follow us on Twitter at the Flex Network 1. If you like what you're listening to, please rate us 5 stars, give us a review. It really helps. It helps us understand what we're doing well, what we're not doing well. But more importantly, it helps make the podcast more available to other listeners. If you like what you're watching, please like and subscribe, comment. We will come back and we will answer your comments. We really appreciate the support. Alan, Go ahead.
One more thing. If I would be remiss if I didn't promote this, on July 28th, I caught a big fish, Shane. You know that on the DFS Army podcast. I'm going to be having one of the guys I admire in the broadcasting business for fantasy, Chris List from RotoWire, come on the podcast. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be on July 28th at a live stream. So
that is amazing.
Big
for
fish.
Flex Matt, the big fish. For Flex Matt, for Al, we are the Flex Network.
This is the Flex Network. This is the Flex Network. Flex on them. Flex on everybody. This